Okay, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this second session of our Blender 3D workshop. So, people who had joined in last time, we had seen the basics of Blender, and in today's session, I'm going to cover the edit mode, which is the actual mode where you are doing the modeling part in Blender 3D. So, most of you already know about me. I'll just give you a small overview about me. I'm Gaurav Pant. I'm a open source software enthusiast, and I use all open source software for my work. And as a profession, I'm into teaching. I'm in Symbiosis. I go over there and teach various subjects relating to web and web development. And Blender and 3D modeling is as a part of my hobby. I work upon this, and sometimes I do take sessions relating to this also. Now, I have been using open source software since 2002, and 2002 is for the first time when I started working with open source software. And within a year or so, there was no looking back, and 99.9% of the times I'm working with the open source software only for all my work. So yes, everything is possible with open source software, and that's the best part of it. And all the software is legally licensed, so you can use it without any issues and other aspects. So we have discussed these points earlier also, and I would not want to repeat those things again and again. So we'll be starting with today's session. Now, if people who are planning to try out the things with me, they can they should be running their Blender. And I'm using Blender version 4.3.2. If even if you are using some version up, down, or 3 series also, it won't make much of the difference, because we are going to discuss about the edit mode, and no great changes as such are there in the basic functionality over there. Fine. So I'll be sharing my screen. If you have any queries or anything, you can put it in the chat box. My co-host Geeta is going to take up my session. Sorry, my co-host Geeta is going to take up those questions, and I will answer those things. Fine. So she was a bit scared when I said she's going to take the session. She's going to handle the questions and all. And in any case, if you would want to come on audio video, you are welcome, and you can ask your queries, no issues. So let's get started. I'll just share my screen. Fine. Okay. So this is our Blender 3D, which we had seen last time. I'm just going to go through a review of these points. What is the screen? People who are really new to Blender 3D, fine. They can just get an overview. And I have also made a series of videos, which is there as a Blender 3D basics in almost 1 hour. So people who would be wanting to learn step by step, they can view those videos later on. And in today's session, you can try to understand these concepts and all what we can do. So getting to our Blender 3D part, what we are going to have over here is our Blender screen. Fine. Blender, as usual, you know that you can download it from blender.org. Fine. And it's a open source software available under the GNU GPL license as usual. Fine. So I have this Blender 3D version, which is I'm using it on my Linux system. You can use it on Windows. You can use it on Mac also, and any kind of basic machine, i5, i7, with somewhere around 8 GB of RAM, and a regular video card is okay to work with, not a problem. But if you really want to get into the detailed graphics, animations, and a lot of details, so yes, some kind of graphics card and other thing is expected. But yes, to initially start learning and working with the Blender journey or 3D modeling and animation, you can start with any of the machines that you have. So you can do a lot of learning in that itself. Fine. So let's get started. So this is our Blender screen over here, and what we have in the Blender screen is This is our 3D view area. Fine. This is where we usually work, and by default, when you start your Blender screen, you get this particular view. This is a grid which represents some visualization for us, because this is the 3D or 3D universe where we are going to work, which is an infinite space as such. So this grid represents our 3D workable area, and if you see, there is a green and red color over here. The green color represents the y-axis, red represents the x-axis, and there is also a z-axis which we had seen last time. Z-axis is usually not shown. I'll show you a z-axis which represents up down, and this is our center of universe. With the concept of coordinate geometry, we have this 0 comma 0 comma 0. Fine. And this is a reference point so that we can place our objects accordingly. Fine. So by default, when you start with a cube. This is a primitive shape, what we call as. So there are some primitive shapes provided to you so that you don't have to start working with the complete shape as it is. So we have this primitive shape over here, which is our cube. A light is provided and a camera is provided. There is some environment light, but in terms of 3D, whenever we talk about, then there has to be some light in your environment, and those lights are provided. So the lights basically provide us this kind of functionality over here. Fine. So the basic movements, zoom in, zoom out is your scroll mouse. Fine. And click and drag the middle mouse button to move around like this. If none of these is suitable to you, you can use this gizmo over here to move around. Fine. Just click and drag on the gizmo so you can move around on this. Then we have zoom in, zoom out. You can click and drag on this gizmo to zoom in, zoom out your object. Then we have this hand icon to shift here and there your object settings. There is something called as a camera view. If you click on this, the thing is that you have a camera, right? So the camera is basically responsible to give us the final output. So whenever we are making an animation or model or something, you have to show it from a particular view. So obviously there has to be a camera in your scene. It can be more cameras. So what is visible through the camera, we should know. So this view tells me what is visible to the camera. Fine. And there is another concept of orthographic and perspective view. So we'll be working in the perspective view for the time being. The mode which we are working right now is called as our object mode, which means when we work on any of these objects, we are actually working on the complete object. So the basic operations that we can perform of the object are called as scaling. That means you can scale the shape of the object, which is like complete scaling, scaling on a particular axis or like this, so that you can reshape the basic primitive object into a particular shape from where you can further work into your requirements over here. Fine. So we have these primitive shapes which are like, let's say I can add primitive shapes by going to add and mesh. So there are a lot of different objects which are required for different purposes. We'll be sticking to mesh objects. So there is a plane, a flat surface is there, cube is there, circle is there, UV sphere, cylinder. Like cylinder is there if you want to start with a tube type shape, or you want to make a bottle or something like that. You can start with these primitive shapes. You don't have to create that complete shape like that. Fine. So this is our shape over here. So let's get back to our point. So basically we have these primitive shapes with which you can further make modifications and create things like that. Like for example, if you wanted to make a ring like shape or something, you can start with a torus. This kind of shape is given. So some basic primitive shapes are there with which we are going to work with. Fine. Now this is our 3D view area I discussed. This is an area which is used for animation. If we get enough of time, I might show you how to create a small animation over here today. And this is our outliner where we get information about our objects and other things. And this is properties section where there are a lot of properties relating to different kind of things that are there. Fine. Now, when we are in the edit mode, which is the default mode when your system starts, this particular section is primarily required for adding objects and manipulating their basic shapes. Fine, like if I wanted this torus to be of a specific size in like this, fine, a drum kind of shape I wanted to create, so I could shape it in whole. Basic structure of that object I can edit or manage over here. But the point is that this object is going to be handled in its whole shape, fine. And when we talk about 3D modeling, we have to have different kind of sections and parts in our object, fine. So we want to edit this particular object. So primarily in our object mode, which you can notice here on the top left corner, which mode we are in. Here you can see a drop down. There are different modes. So we are going to work in these two modes, object mode and edit mode. Okay. So object mode is usually where we add our objects, fine, the primitive objects, cameras, lights, and other things. And edit mode is the other mode where we edit a object in its different parts, fine. So what exactly is edit mode and what we can edit over there, we are going to see, fine. So let me just start with a new file again. So here, let us say we have this cube and we want to edit this cube. Now, before we get into the edit mode concept, let's try to understand what exactly is a mesh object, fine. Now, this is a 3D coordinate geometry, or whenever we have 3D representation, it is in a 3D coordinate geometry. That means X, Y, Z points are there. And objects that are there in our Blender, which are the mesh objects primarily with which people work for modeling, these mesh objects are made of certain concept. Fine, like you can currently see this is a cube, and you might be knowing cube has how many surfaces? 6 surfaces. Everyone has worked with dice and all, played with the dice. So you have 6 surfaces. That means this is one surface, this is another surface, this is another surface and all. Fine. Now, how does this surface gets created, or how does the computer construct this? Fine. So in 3D geometry, fine, what happens is our cube which is there, okay, this cube which is there, or any object that is there, is constructed with certain things called as your vertices, edges, and your this thing, faces. Now, so how do we get vertices? So vertices is the smallest unit or any point, fine. Like in geometry, we know that we have this 1 point. Point is the smallest unit, and it has no dimensions. So vertex is any point in any 3D area, fine. Then if you have 2 points like this, first point here and another point here, and you connect these points together, fine. If you connect these points together, what you get is a line. That is what we call it in our normal geometry. Here, this line is called as an edge, fine. So if you have 2 vertices, you can get an edge. Now, if you have worked with geometry, you might be knowing to create an enclosed shape, 2-dimensional enclosed shape, you need at least 3 points. So if you have these 3 points, what you can get is a triangular shape, fine. Once you have a triangular shape, fine, then that becomes an enclosed shape, but it is pass through. That means there is nothing covering it. So if you take a piece of paper and stick around it on that triangular area, you get a surface. You stick a paper or hard material or whatever, then you get a surface over there. So basically our objects here in 3D representation, the mesh objects, these are represented as vertices, edges, and faces. So any set of edges which are connected together, minimum 3, maximum can be anything, fine. So this edge as you can see now, I have changed to another mode called as a wireframe mode, where you can see the wireframe type of design. So we can see through it and try to understand what is the shape. So this is kind of wireframe created. Now if you fill up this particular wireframe over here, you will get a surface, fine, or in terms of mesh we call it as a face, fine, for a short we call it as a face. So basically now what we have to understand and do is that we need to edit these faces, these points and these edges separately to get a different kind of shape. We have to make changes to this shape, edit this particular shape, fine. So the operations that we were seeing in our object mode, now these operations we will be able to do on different vertices, edges and faces, fine. And that way we will be able to construct complex geometry out of it, and we can do 3D modeling over there. Okay, so let's get back to first our standard shape. So this is the cube shape which I have, and now I want to edit this. Now if I simply wanted it to be a bit elongated, I could do that basic changes, basic shape which you need to work upon further. For the further work, we have to get that basic shape done in the object mode. So let's say I just wanted it a bit elongated, so I might scale it on y-axis a bit like this, right? If you are not comfortable with the shortcuts and all, you can select this. This is the move tool, fine. This is the rotation tool, and this is the scale tool. So I'll click on the scale tool and I will just scale it on y-axis a bit, fine. So here I have scaled it, and let me just apply scale to it. Please do this every time you scale your object, so that the geometry, changed geometry is gone into the Blender's memory, and then we can do the editing further. Now I want to work upon this shape to do some other kind of things, fine. So let's to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to shift into our edit mode. So how do you shift into edit mode is, so for that purpose you have to select one of the objects first on which you have to work with. Now edit mode is primarily for the mesh objects, fine. So you have to select one of the mesh objects. For understanding, I will add another mesh object over here and keep it on side, fine. So I have to select one of the mesh objects which I want to work upon. So suppose I wanted to work upon this particular mesh object, then I will select this mesh object and I will switch to my edit mode, right? Here you can switch to edit mode like this. Now one thing about Blender or 3D tools is that if you are more comfortable with the keyboard shortcuts, then you can work faster. So here tab is a shortcut for switching between edit mode and object mode. So with the object selected, I will press tab and I'm into edit mode. You can see that it has changed over here in edit mode, and you can see a lot of tools that have popped up over here. So we are going to discuss few of the tools from the edit mode, and we will see how we can work with those tools. So now when we are in edit mode, the object which you had selected, you can work only with that. By default, the whole object is selected, or rather I would say either the vertices, edges or faces will be selected, all of them, fine. That depends on which sub mode you are working in edit mode. You might be working on vertices, edges or faces, that I will discuss in a few seconds. So now over here, even if I want, I cannot select any other object, you can see, fine. So edit mode, usually you work with one object only. One point that I would want to add before we proceed is a mistake that many people do, is that just a second. Many people do is that they add objects in the edit mode, fine. If you add an object in the edit mode, it gets as a part of this object. It may not be connected directly to this, but it will be considered as a part of this object, fine. Then when you go to the different mode, then the whole object is considered as one, so it gives us trouble. I'll just demonstrate that to you. Let's say if I add a cylinder over here, and I grab it and place it over here. So, and when we come out of this, if you see, in object mode both of them are connected together now, right? So we don't want this happening. So usually we don't add objects in the edit mode. We add the objects in the object mode itself, until unless, see, this is not a bug or wrong thing, but generally objects are added separately until unless that is your specific requirement that these two objects should be considered as only one unit. Then you can do that. It's it is allowed, but keep this in mind. By mistake, a lot of people initially when they are working, in fact sometimes I also, while working, I forget and I add an object over here, and then it becomes a part of this. Though we can separate them and all, everything can be done, but still, why get into that trouble? So keep this point in mind. So now here, when we are in our edit mode, we can edit this particular object. So editing of the object, as we get discussed, can be done on either the vertices, the edges, or the faces. Fine. Now vertices, as you know, vertices do not have any kind of dimensions, so you cannot do the scale operation on the vertices. You cannot scale a single vertex, or you cannot rotate a single vertex. They don't have a dimension. Fine. Rotation, scale, and other things is directly possible only on edges or faces. So let's start with a few things. Let's see what we can do is, I am here in the edit mode and the sub mode is the vertex mode. So how do you shift from vertex, edge, or face mode? You will notice next to this edit mode over here on the top left corner, here vertex mode is selected. Fine. So we are in vertex select. Then you have the edge select. In this case, I can work on edges, and we have the face select where I can work on the faces. So dependent upon what you are planning to do, you will have to switch between these things. And the shortcut simply to switch between these things is the numbers 1, 2, and 3 from the number area. Fine. Normal number keys which you have. So 1, 2, 3, we can switch between these modes. 1 is, you can see I've pressed 1, it goes to vertex, 2 edge, and 3 is face mode. So whatever mode you want to work with, you will select that particular mode and work upon it. So now let us say we wanted to edit this shape over here in the basic things. First, let's try with the vertices. So I can select a vertex, and here I can do is move the vertex. Fine. I can move the vertex. There is no point trying to scale the vertex. Fine. There's no point trying to scale the vertex, but you can move the vertex in this particular manner and try to change the shape of the box. So you can see the cuboid shape is changed. So here we are now manipulating the basic shape over there. Now, interestingly, if you want, you can select 2, 3 by pressing shift. You can select multiple vertices. Fine. Shift select, and shift click, select it or unselect it. So you can select multiple vertices, and then you can move it accordingly. How many of them are selected, the shape will change accordingly. Fine. Now here this comes with the understanding of practice, that how many you have selected and how you will move, they will give you that kind of shape. Fine. So multiple vertices can be selected like this. Now the interesting aspect is when you select multiple vertices, so you have almost selected an edge. Now if there is an edge selection, then the scaling is possible. Right? So we will shift to the scale tool over here, and now if I do, fine, the scaling is possible in this particular manner. Fine. Even I can rotate this particular one. So basically, since 2 vertices are selected, whenever you have more than 2 vertices, you will be able to do something like this. Fine. So editing an object is possible in this particular manner. And similarly, we can work with edges. So I get into the edge mode. I can select, I can say scale. Fine. I'm using the keyboard shortcuts. I'm press scaling. So you could rotate it, fine, rotate it as per your requirement, or you could scale, rotate, and what else is there? Move it. You can move it to some other location, right? So we have changed this particular shape into this. So this way I could create some interesting shapes. Let me show you one simple demonstration over here. What I could do with this particular kind of thing is that, let me delete this. Let's add a mesh, which is a cylinder, right? Now this cylindrical shape, we will try to convert it into a stool kind of a thing. In many places you might have seen a stool which is smaller in between, and then there are two bases. So in this particular case, what we can do is we can simply go to the face select, select the top face, and rotate it on Z axis. Now when we rotate it on Z axis, we can straightforward get a shape like this, right? Okay, so we have edited this and we have straightforward got a shape like this. Now you can consider this as a stool, or you can consider this as a basic shape for if you wanted to create that dumru, you can create that dumru out of it, or whatever like this. Now further, if we edit, if we go into the details of these things, we can make these shapes more interesting, and that's the idea. So primary thing is it's more about your creativity. I can teach you the basic aspects, what are there, the functionality, and then it is your creativity and working on this particular tool or maybe any other tool. See, my preference is open source, so I would always promote this. But to be very frank, irrespective of the tool you are using, if you have this concept clear of using a tool, not that I'm using Blender or I'm using GIMP or Photoshop, if your concepts are clear, you should be able to work with most of the tools, fine. So today if I'm teaching or discussing this thing in terms of Blender, you should be able to work on Maya or whatever other open source or other softwares that are there. You should be able to work on 3D because these concepts are going to remain same. Few things are here and there. So anyway, so we have got this particular shape, right? Similarly, I will demonstrate another example over here. Let's again take a mesh. I'll take a cube. Now what I want is that I want to shape it like a simple boat. Now how people will say how this would look like a boat, fine, simple boat kind of a shape. So let's do one thing. We will scale this on Z axis, right? Make it a bit smaller. Okay. And then we will get into our edit mode. Now, what is the shape of a boat? Shape of the boat is like, what do you say? Burfi kind of a shape, fine. So let's do one thing. Let's select these two edges or vertices, and we will go into the top view and we will scale them, fine. So now when I scale this, it becomes like this, and I will grab these ones and maybe, or I will leave it as it is. And now I will go to the bottom side. I'll grab these two and scale this, fine. I will scale them like this. Okay, so now you see I have achieved a basic boat shape over here. Now no one can say okay, this was a cube, right? So we have achieved a boat shape, and a few other operations could make it look like more interesting as a boat shape, but the basic shape which I needed, I have been able to edit it and I have been able to convert it into a shape. So that's the purpose of our edit mode, where I have edited this into this particular shape. So utilizing of the very basic things of moving the vertices, edges or faces, I can have very interesting shapes. Basic shapes can be developed over here in our work, fine. So it will be up to you, your thought process and working, that when you have to work with, you have to start with a suitable primitive shape and then convert it into the very rough basic shape nearby that object. And then further, what we are going to discuss today is going to help us uh, get into the detailed shape of this thing. Fine. So like I had shared one object in my poster was that cube, how to create that cube we will see, or maybe a dice, and one space station. I had tried to create a simple one by not spending too much of time, but that we can create from this. Okay, now uh, we will get into our work again. Now, before we start into this, few things that I would want to add is that whenever we add few of these primitive shapes, there are some options, fine, which you have to keep in mind and which are helpful later on when we are working. So shapes like plane, cube, this does not have any options, but whenever you usually add any of these objects, like when I add objects, before you click anywhere on the screen, you have this add cube or related thing will come up, and before you can do, you can still adjust that primitive shape here itself. Fine. Now here the size of the cube is in 2 meters as such, and its location rotation can be set over here. So cube does not have that much of option, but let's say, let's take a mesh cylinder. Fine. Now so you notice that the cylinder is made up of these things. Fine. If I put it in this Z wireframe mode, so cylinder is made up of something like this. So our primitive shapes are made up of a lot of points and edges, and the more number of points and faces are there, they give more curved these things, but not necessary every time we want this complexity. So here you can see for shapes like cylinder and all, we can reduce the number of this thing. uh, Fine. So over here you can see I can convert this, right? The number I can reduce more or less. So very interestingly, if you see, cylinders very basic shape is like a prism, and then you can have it as a cube. Cube is also there. The number of vertices that you increase are going to be this. Fine. I think we had a question or some. th-
Yes, we have one question from Harshika. How do we switch to wireframe mode?
Okay, so the wireframe mode, basically you can press Z or shift Z with the object selected. Fine. Z, shift, shift Z is for your wireframe mode. That's a toggle key. So select the object, shift Z, and shift Z changes it to wireframe mode. Otherwise also you can select the mode from here. On the top right corner you can see different modes are there. Fine. So this is your wireframe mode. You can switch it from here itself. Fine. So you have to switch to another mode, wireframe to solid mode. This is what we usually work with. The shift Z basically switches between solid and wireframe mode. Solid mode is the mode on which we do our what do you call it, the model editing or modeling part. Fine. Here the idea behind solid mode is that from whichever side you are going to see, you will see a proper light falling on it. Fine. This is for the working with the model and not the color combination or reflection. Fine. There are other modes which is like the rendered mode. Rendered mode will be showing you the output based on the lights, and then there is this shading mode. So this is the rendered mode, sorry, and this was the material preview mode. Fine. So whenever we are working with modeling, we will be working with the this thing, solid mode. Fine. So shift Z basically switches between these things. So coming back to our point, what I was talking about was that whenever you add a primitive shape, what you make sure is that you set the operations or set the shape by reducing or increasing or reducing the number of faces, vertices and all. So like here in this particular case, this is a UV sphere, right? So I could make it more complex or I could reduce the numbers, right? Sometimes you can create very, very interesting shapes just by changing these values and like something like this. So If I wanted a shape to start with something like this, I could start with a UV sphere and make it like this. So you have to play around and see that what would be a very basic shape to start with. Apart from that, like if you are looking for a symmetric distribution of these things, like here I have 24 segments over here, right? So this is the segments, vertical ones. So 24 segments means I'm going to get 24 faces over here, and if there are 24 faces, then I can have odd even selection easily. But if it is not in a proper number of divisions and also, you may not have be able to do that. Again, just keep this in mind, and this is what are the basic ideas. So whenever you add a shape, you have to just keep in mind that while adding the shape, whatever we are adding, like in cone, fine, when we talk about cone, here again there are number of vertices, radius, other things, and there is fill based type. There is a n-gon and nothing and triangular fan. Some options are there which basically makes a difference in how this base is there. So the thing is that you have to decide with the basic shape and then only start working with our object later on. Fine. So this is one basic aspect that we have to keep in mind. So this is the basic thing. Now we will be jumping into some interesting uh, objects, the basic operations like we have seen working on your, what do you call it, edges, vertices and faces that we have done. Again, I'll just add this thing, and few other operations I will show you is that you can delete these faces, edges, vertices, like shift to face mode. Fine, you could select a face and right click on it, and you will see that there is a delete face option, there is a dissolve face option, and separate and other kind of options are there. First we will see just delete face. So face delete, basically it deletes a face. Now you can see you have a open box kind of a shape available over here. Fine, so you could delete a face, you could delete an edge, or you could delete a vertex as per your requirement. Like if I say delete say edge, so it deletes that edge. Now unfortunately, when we delete something like this joining edge, the whole face gets deleted. Fine, because this is an open area. To have a face, we need to have an enclosed area. Okay, so few things, like you, when you keep on working, you will automatically understand these aspects. Fine, like what happens if we delete this vertex. If we delete this vertex, then all these sides are gone, because this vertex was joining these three lines, fine, these three edges, and they were the supporting part for faces. Now again, what we have this is usually used in many people use this area when they have to show the room. So we start with this kind of basic shape and we demonstrate a room inside this. Fine, so again, this is edited into some shape with which we can further work upon. Now we will get into the different aspects of editing objects, and we are going to see, let's see what I had decided is, let's talk about interesting operation called as extrude first. Okay, what is extrude? Now you see this object which I have. Fine, if I select this particular face, if I grab this, grab, or let us say move this. Fine, if I move this like this, what happens is the size is increasing. The size is increasing, but you will notice that the number of faces and other things are same. Fine, the geometry of the object still remains same. Fine, geometry of the object. Now suppose I wanted some extension over here. That means if I extended it, this line should remain over here. Means I want to extend the geometry. So that is called as a extrude. So extrude will leave this shape as it is, but add more geometry to the side you are extruding the object. So for extrude, we will select the extrude tool. Fine. And in the extrude tool, you can pull this in one direction or the other direction. Usually we pull it outside. So now you see when I extrude it, what I get is more geometry. Now my object has become more complex over here, right? We had 6 faces and all. Now we have more number of faces. This face has moved outside because you don't see a dot over here, right? In this wireframe mode, X-ray type of wireframe mode, we can see the faces. So there is no face in between. This face moved, but what happened is 1, 2, 3. These 3 faces have been added. So our geometry has increased. So with this particular extrude mechanism, what I could do is I could create some interesting geometry out of it. Fine. So you see now my object is completely different. In the solid mode, you will not see those line divisions and all, but what you have is your object is broken up into multiple faces. Fine. So when you have these multiple faces, you can work on them separately. So here I am extruding these areas, right? And I am getting some shape out of it. You could create different kind of shapes. So when we are trying to model an object, one of the things that we try to do is, it's not a compulsion, to create the whole object from one single object by extruding it. Sometimes it's not possible, and sometimes it could be time consuming also, but this particular mechanism of extruding and scaling and other operations that we do on the single object, uh, it helps us doing is that we have to manage only one object. Apart from that, this is useful for models which we are going to use only for demonstration. That means I want to show a model of a car or model of aeroplane or something like that. I would try to model it out of a single object. I will try to do that. It's a very complex object, sometimes it's not possible. The issue is that when you have these kind of geometry, you cannot provide movement to it. Let us say that this was an arm. Fine, this was an arm like this, and you wanted to move it up and down, then it will not work properly with a single object like this. Fine, but the load on the computer with this kind of configuration is a bit less. So this is our extrude operation. Extrude operation has some interesting aspects to it, that if you click over here, it has extrude region, extrude along normals, extrude individual, and extrude to cursor. So I will show you these ones, what's the difference. I will go with the extrude along normals. So let's see, if I select 2 faces and we try to extrude it, it extrudes in this particular manner. Fine. Then we have this extrude along normals, and then we try to extrude. Then this is a bit different. Okay. Normals is basically how this face is facing, this wherever it is facing to, that is the usual normal idea. Then finally we have one more extrude operation is individuals. So now I wanted to extrude multiple of them, but along their own movement. Right. So this way you could extrude an object and add more geometry to it. So like if I selected multiple of them and I extruded them, so I could extrude them like this and get some complex shape done out of this. Fine. So this is our extrude operation with which we can create this particular kind of a shape. Extruding, creating more geometry. So this is one of the ways of adding more geometry to our particular shape. Fine. The second operation that we are going to see over here is called as a loop cut operation. Fine. So let's add some object over here, and let's add cylinder over here, and I will just put it to 32. Okay. Now this cylinder, I'm going to rotate it on x-axis by 90 degrees like this, scale on x, or sorry, y, right? And let's apply the scale to it. Now we want to edit this particular object for some work, and let's try to understand what is loop cuts. Now, if you look at this particular cylinder over here, fine, it has these straight cuts over here. That means I can work on these faces, but these faces are not subdivided further, right? These are not subdivided. So if I wanted to work into some certain area of this, I would want to break it down. So in this particular scenario, what we could do is we could use something called as a loop cut, and this is the loop cut tool. Fine, you can click on the loop cut tool and bring your cursor somewhere. So you will see a circle appearing. Let me put it in wireframe mode. Fine, just a second. Let's put it in wireframe mode. So now you can see if I put a circle appears. So depending upon where your cursor is, a circular shape or a loop type of shape will come. It's not specifically only for cylinder. It can work with cube and other things. Wherever it can create a proper loop, it will create a loop. So here a loop can be created like this also. Fine. It is allowing me to create a loop. Fine. So we will create a cut over here. I will click on this, and now a pop-up comes for this. Fine. Now I can increase the number of loops over here, right? How many breakdowns I want. Then there is factor which decides which side these loops will go. Fine. So if you just want it equal divisions, and over here leave it to 0. And smoothness, what is smoothness? This is interesting. Fine, let's do it like this, and you can play around with this. This is the default cut over here, and if you change this, you can see I can change the shape over here itself, right? So like if I wanted to create a vase or something, I could set it like this. Now this inverse square and other things are like how this shape changes. Okay, like if you say it is sharp, it will be sharp in the center. So these things are to be just played around with and see them. And let's say enter, and our shape is ready. Now let's get back to this. Now look at it, how the shape is there. So this shape is ready. Fine. Now you can work upon this as a vase, rotate it on x-axis by 90 degree, and you have a basic vase type of shape ready. Fine. A common example which we usually take for a easier understanding is like a podium example which we usually take in Olympics and all. You might have seen that first place, second place, third place example is there. So if you wanted to create something like this, fine, what you would do is, let me just move this guy aside. So generally people would do is like they will say create a copy of this cube. Fine, grab it on Y. Will you would place it here, and Control C, Control V, grab it on Y, and sorry, grab it on X, and you will place it here. Fine, and let's say you scale it on Z a bit, scale this one on Z a bit, let's say, and then you just try to align them. But now what is happening here is like you have primarily three objects. You have three objects, fine. So instead of doing this, what we usually do is like we could reduce the number of objects. So what we do is, let's go to the front view. Let's scale our cube on x-axis 3 times almost, fine. So this was 2 units here. I have scaled it almost 3 times now. Now what we will do is we will go into the edit mode. We will run the loop cuts over here, fine. And we will create 2 loop cuts. That's it. And now what I will do is I will go to the face mode, and I will extrude this upwards, maybe like this slightly. And this one I will grab on Z axis. Right? I will not extrude it. Why? Because extruding will induce more geometry into it. So moving it, though this line looks like here like this, fine, but the idea is that I'm not increasing the number of faces. One of the aspects of 3D geometry or 3D modeling is to also reduce the number of vertices, edges, faces. So with practice, you will decide whether you want to extrude it or whether you can just pull it up and work with that. So over here, I have just taken it, grabbed it and placed it upwards. And now you can see we have our object. And if we see this in wireframe mode, you can see this is there, right? Now, obviously, a few things that we can do is like we go to the edit mode, fine, and we could select these faces and click on it, and there is a dissolve faces option. So dissolve faces will dissolve these faces, fine. This is okay. So when we dissolve this, because this is not going to break any other geometry, this is connected here, this is connected here, but these two faces can be dissolved. Similarly, I could dissolve these two faces on the back side and I could reduce the geometry. Right? Okay, so like if I select this face and I say right click and dissolve faces, do this. Right? So now I have reduced a geometry. So this way, using the loop cuts, you can create loops around your object and break it up into multiple parts and work upon it. So that's the concept behind loop cut operation, where we are using the loop cuts to do something like this. Fine. So this is our bottle over here, vase. Fine. Let's keep it in the center. Okay, so now we have seen the loop cut, we have seen your extrude. Now we are going to see one operation called as the inset operation. And with the inset operation, we are going to see how we can create that interesting cube or something. But before that, let's take up one example of how we can create a simple table chair out of a simple cube over here. Fine. So let's do one thing. Let's say add a mesh. Let's add a cube. Fine. So now if I wanted to make a table or chair or out of this, how I'm going to do? Fine. Again, I'm saying that this is not a strict rule, but preferred that we work with our objects, single object, and try to make things out of that. So scale this object, apply scale. So now this is going to be my tabletop. Fine. Now, if I go into edit mode, I will notice that there is a complete face. If I extrude this, the whole face will be extruded, which is not a suitable thing to do. So first of all, we need to have breakup in this table. So let's try our loop cut method. Let's go to the loop cut. Fine. I'll go into the top view and we'll place a loop cut like this. Fine. And let's increase the number of loop cuts, say 4 or maybe 5, 6. Fine. So some 7 loop cuts we have made, 8. Okay. Now next loop cut we will make in this manner. We will make 8 loop cuts. Fine. Now what we have here is a geometry which is created. Now you can see our faces are broken, multiple parts. There is another way to do it. In the loop cuts, we have increased quite a number of geometry, but trying to understand the usage of loop cut. So let's go back. This is top view. I will go to the bottom view because the legs are going to be on the bottom side. So to create a table, we need at least 3 legs over there. We'll take a standard table. I will take these 4 sections over here. Fine. 4 faces. You can decide which one you want. Fine. And now what we are going to do is I'll go into this view. I will say extrude and I will pull out these things. Fine. Extrude them like this. Now I will extrude it again, and with all selected, fine, like this, we can scale them. Now the only thing is, when all of these are selected like this and you try to scale them, it does not scales them individually. Fine. It is doing a weird action. So for that, what you could try is, there is something called as this shrink flatten and push pull. So let's try the shrink flatten, and shrink flatten is not doing anything for me. Let's try doing push pull. I think push pull is also not working. So let's leave it aside like this. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to scale these ones to make the table look more interesting. I will say scale it a bit small. Now I want to repeat the same thing. Now one thing is that if you know the keyboard shortcut, you could say scale it to zero point 0.7 point something like that. But if you wanted to repeat this operation, is then what you do is simply select the other face and press Shift R. Fine. Shift R is repeat the last operation. So this way I will achieve the same scale for all of them. Fine. So I will select all of them once again, extrude them a bit, right? And this is somewhat our table legs. You want them more fancy, then select one of these, say rotate on Z axis, give it a bit of rotation like this, fine. And then select remaining one and do Shift R on them. Of course, there can be hundreds of techniques for doing this, but just for your introductory purpose, we have done this. So what we have achieved is a very simple table over here. Fine. Now, if you want to make it look interesting, let's do one thing. Let's go ahead, add some color to it. Fine. What we want is a dark brownish table, maybe. Okay. And let's see it in the rendered mode. So we have our table ready. And if you remember from the last time, uh, we can add more colors to it. So we can select a lot of parts from this. So at this point, I will introduce you to one more tool. Now selecting multiple of these, you can do a shift select, right? You can do a shift select, but this is a problem. Fine. So we have these two tools. Okay. So first is our tweak tool, which is the standard normal select tool. This is what is usually active. There is a select box, select circle, and lasso. So let's see what is the select box. Select box basically allows us to drag a box, and whatever is there in the box gets selected. So in the 3D view area, like if I drag something like this, of course I'm in edit mode, so it will select only one object. But like if you are in object mode and if you are in box select mode, you can select multiple objects. Fine. Now with table selected, let's get back to this. So this is box select. Fine. So using box select, you could usually preferable is that you go into top view, side view, or the orthographic views, and you could drag and you could select multiple of them. This is the box select. Then we have this circle select. Circle select, you can see a circle coming up. This circle size can be increased or decreased. Fine. The circle size can be increased or decreased by your this thing. What do you call it? The mouse wheel, which is fine. Somehow not happening right now. I don't know why. Just a second. Okay, I don't know. This when I select it from here, the circle radius. Okay, you have to do it manually from here, it seems. Fine. Otherwise, what we could do is keep it on this tweak mode. Press C. C takes you into the circle select mode. And here, when you move your mouse wheel, the cursor, this circular selection area will be increased or decreased. So you can just click the areas which you want to select, fine, and shift click unselects those areas. So you can use either of the mechanism to select multiple areas, fine. Like if I've selected these areas, fine, now I could do some other operation on this. And let's say we will add one more color to this. Let's say a very dark color type of thing. If you remember the last time session, we have added this. So now you can see your table looks more interesting over here. Fine. So what we have seen is this operation of loop cuts, extrude, and how we can create an object like this. So the idea is that when you do the loop cuts and other operations, you should aim on having lesser number of loop cuts and adjust them in such a way that we have lesser number of this thing. If this table is not going to be a complex shape, then like I had told you last time, that we could preferably like select all these ones, and we could preferably like say dissolve faces so that we have some less number of faces over here. If you wanted to do something more complex in these areas, then the faces should be uh, lesser over there, or you have to break it up into that part. To do that, what you could do is like on a face you can right click and then there is a subdivide option. Fine. Here there is a subdivide option, and then you could subdivide the face. Now that usually will work on a normal proper subdivided face. Sometimes because of the change in geometry it does not work so properly, but you could subdivide it. So like when we started in our table, if you did not want any kind of complexity over here, we could have simply subdivided this particular part instead of running the loop cuts. Fine. So this is what we have is a table ready. Let's try making a chair also now. Let's grab this table and put it aside. And for chair also, we will start with a mesh like cube. And let me just be on the normal solid view. Let's scale this on Z axis. So this will be working as the base of my chair. Let's go to the edit mode. And this time, let's try to take some other mechanism. Is run a loop cut, and let's take two loop cuts and let's shift it somewhere like this. Okay, let's try this again. Let's say we will create one loop cut and we'll place it here. Let's create another loop cut and we will place it nearby this place. And now for the back side, we will create a loop cut, place it here, somewhere here, and one more loop cut. Let us say we will place it here. Okay, so now I have reduced the number of loop cuts, and similarly, to get the legs outside, we will place another loop cut over here. Fine. So let's go into the top view. Another loop cut over here and another loop cut over here. Fine. Okay, so I'm not doing it very precisely. I'm just doing this. So now these loop cuts are ready. Let's come back to this mode. Let's select face, and let's first pull out the legs as usual. We'll take these four sides and we will extrude them. The legs are there, and let's just do the usual rotate on this, rotate on Z. Fine. And we'll just do the shift R for all these remaining ones. So this is the legs are ready. Now the back, dependent upon how complex back you want to create, we could extrude this upwards. Fine. And then what? Let's try putting a loop cut over here, and let's try putting a loop cut over here. Fine. So two loop cuts are there. So now I have these faces over here. These faces, this one and this one. Fine. And there is a very interesting option. You right click on it and there is an option of bridge faces. Fine. And here this is filled up directly. Okay, so my chair is done, my table is done, and you can add some color to this chair from the existing materials. And let's see it in the rendered mode. So we have our table chair. So light is not shining properly. Grab the light, place it over here. So we have a table chair set ready over here. Now, if you wanted more chairs, you could simply duplicate the chair, right? Place it somewhere, create another duplicated, place it somewhere else, create another duplicate and place it somewhere else. And then just rotate it on Z by 180 degrees. So you have this chair, rotate on Z by say -90. I'll just adjust your chairs and all, and do some light settings, make it a spotlight or something. Fine. Right. So we have this. Now the point is that we have used the edit mode and we have created this table chair set. And interestingly, every object is a single object. Fine. One thing that you have to keep in mind during these things, many of us don't do it, that rename these to proper one, like table. Okay. My caps lock is on. Make it table and name them like chair 3, chair 2, and so on, because as your project will grow big, it becomes very difficult to keep track of what is what thing. Fine. So this way we have understood the concept of loop cuts, extrude, and these things. Now I will take all these table chairs. Fine. These table chairs, we will just move them away to one side. Now what we want to see is, I'll just set this light back to the normal point lamp. Is the next operation is how we can create a simple bottle out of a cylinder. Right? We want to create a simple bottle out of a cylinder. So over
Sir, can we have a rendered view for all these things? This chair and table?
okay, the final output. Okay. So okay, so let's just set the table chairs properly. Rotate this on the axis by 90. So we have put our table chair. Now generally if you want a good rendered view and all, so let's try to place them properly accordingly. Okay, so roughly they are there. Let's add a plane. So plane is added over here. Scale this and let's just get our table chairs. Let's keep them on the plane so that you can see the shadow effect and all. And let's see what we can see through our cameras. Camera is very near. We'll have to replace the camera to some other view so that you could see the effect. Okay, so this is our camera view and let's increase the light wattage bit. Fine. And this base does not have any color, so let's just leave it. So to render the output, we are going to say render image. And here we are going to see the rendered output, how the final output looks. This is the final output of our work, right? So as usual, if you like this thing, you can just say save the image as jpg, png, whatever you like. So this rendered output is basically like if you are doing a design modeling for someone, you have set the lights and all, so the camera view is what is going to give you the output. Fine. That camera view output is what the other person is going to see. This view is your view while you are working with this particular system. Fine. Okay, so let's move on to the next part, that is how we can model a particular thing like a bottle. So to model a bottle, what we will do is we will say add a cylinder, because cylinder is the basic shape with which we can model a bottle. So we will add this cylinder. Fine. I think we are in rendered mode. Let's go to the solid mode. Grab this on Z axis. Fine. And now let's get into the edit mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this view. I have selected the top face. Fine. And I'm just going to grab it and take it here. Okay. Now, dependent upon the kind of shape or something that you want, we will run the loop cuts over here. Fine. Increase the number of loop cuts, let's say 3. Now you have to think accordingly what you want to do. I want to do some separate operations on separate areas of this bottle. So once this is subdivided, now I will do the loop cuts over here and increase the loop cuts. So you will notice that the loop cuts that are increased over here are only in this specific area. Fine. Now I'm going to put some loop cuts over here. Fine. So what exactly I'm trying to do is I'm going to change the shape of the bottle on these particular areas. Okay, so what I will do is I will select this, and if I do a shift control and I click on this, fine, or shift alt, shift and alt, what it gives me is a select the ring. All these are selected. And now if I scale this by pressing S, so you can see I can scale this area. Okay, so this way, if you wanted a bottle in this particular shape, you can shape your bottle. Now here we are going to see one interesting aspect that's called as a proportional editing. You will notice this button over here. This is called as proportional editing. Shortcut is, I think it shows as O. Fine. So if you press O, proportional editing will be turned on and off. So if you turn on proportional editing, you will get this different shapes which we had seen in the loop cut part also. Now when I scale this, fine, you will notice a circle coming up. This is the influence area. How much will be influenced? So if I scale this, the remaining of the parts will be scaled accordingly. Fine. So if I reduce this, the influence is reduced. Fine. If I increase this, the influence is getting increased. Fine. So like if I wanted a bottle to be like this is the head area of my bottle. Similarly, I will do a loop select over here by shift click, and I will scale this. Right. I will scale this. Now this time what we'll do is we'll change the influence to sharp, and let's see what happens. Fine. For the sharp influence, we are getting a different kind of this thing. Fine. So you could scale this, decide on the influence type. Fine. There is a random also. There is an inverse square also. So you can just play around and see how this works. So let's, I think this looks interesting. The shape of the bottle. I have scaled this. Similarly, to get the bottom area, select something, extrude this and scale it. Fine. If you don't want this, disable it and then scale it like this. Then again, let's extrude it a bit, scale it this time, and now I'm going to do something interesting, which is I'm going to grab it on Z axis and take it inwards. Fine. This is how usually there is the bottom of the bottle, and we have what over here is a bottle thing. Fine. So you can take another cylinder and put it as a cap. The point to remember is that, see, if I'm just modeling the bottle and there is a cap enclosed and you don't have to show each and every part of the bottle, it's best not to get into the details of the thread and all. So let's say take a mesh. another, where is the cylinder? Grab it on Z axis and simply scale it roughly nearby this, scale on Z, and that will just roughly work as a cap. Fine. If you want, you could delete this particular face over here. Fine. Delete this face, and a rough cap type of thing is created. Fine. Scale on Shift Z. This is the cap of my bottle, and we have a bottle ready. Fine. So this way I have just simply edited this and converted this into a bottle. Our cylinder shape started with this, and if we try to put in some colors to it, let's say let's add a new material for our bottle, and it's a bit like bluish, or what kind of color should we, light bluish shade to the bottle. And let's see the rendered output. This is how the bottle looks. Fine. This looks like a complete plastic. You can play around with this metallic and roughness and all, and you can say like shade smooth, and your bottle will look smooth over here. Then there is this alpha settings, which basically controls the transparency of the bottle, so you can make it a bit transparent like this. Fine. Since this is not a complete rendered output, we are not going to see this. I'll enable this plane, and let's say I'll just duplicate this and keep it somewhere here. So since it is transparent, you will be able to see through it. Fine. So this way we have created a very simple modeling for the bottle, and this bottle model is ready. Fine. So now what we have discussed in the editing is the proportional editing. We have seen uh, what do you call it, extrude, we have seen loop cuts and all, and now I'm going to discuss the next part is how I created that cube or dice. Fine. So let's just delete this bottle and delete this stuff over here. Fine. Let's add, let me get back solid mode. So of course for that cube I started with a single cube. Now since that cube, if you had seen my poster, right, that cube is only a representational cube. It is not for animation or showing the working of a cube or something. So modeling, one part of your modeling is just the demonstration of the object for the visual appeal. It's just there and how it looks. We don't get into the complex internal details of it. Fine. So there is nothing inside that cube. It's just the overview side of it. So how do we work with, how do we make a cube like that? So I'll just hide this plane for the time being. Select the cube. Fine. You can scale it if you want. I will just work with the standard size. And let's get into the edit mode. Now, if you remember, we had cube, every face has 9 sub faces. Fine. So we have to subdivide it. Fine. And one more operation that we are going to do in that, the new operation that we are going to learn is inset. Inset means create a similar face inside the existing face. I will show you. If I select this, and there is this inset operation somewhere over here, this one, you can select this. I prefer to use the keyboard shortcut, so I'm going to press I. And once you press I and you move your mouse, you can create an inset face. Right? Now, inset face has two aspects of it. Like if I select two faces and I press I, one inset is this. That means these faces will be connected, as you can see. And if you press I again while the inset, basically you can toggle between this, individual faces can be inset. So we are going to use this particular mechanism to create our cube further. Inset the faces. Okay. So first thing to do that is that I am going to subdivide the faces of the cube. So I'll say subdivide. Now you see the first subdivide gives me 4 divisions, and this box comes up, and here we will do 2 subdivisions. It is giving me these many faces. So that's my requirement was there are few other aspects over here where you can like move this to distort the shape and all. Fine, some other aspects are there, you can play around with that. So let's get back to our subdivide again. Let's reset it to the normal thing. You can reset by going right click and reset to default values, and this is what is our requirement. So this basic shape is ready. Fine. Now if you notice, the cube usually has some sticker or plastic stick over here which comes outside. So what we are going to do is we are going to select all the faces, make sure you are in the face mode, and we will press insert, okay, 2 times I, and now we will insert that. Now as per your understanding, increase or decrease this size, whatever you would like to do. Fine, this is increased. Okay, and then we can extrude them a bit. Okay, just a second. So extrude along normals so that we can extrude them like this. Okay, so these are extruded. Now you can see it looks like some plastic covering has been done to this. Now it's up to you how different things you want. You may want to extrude it, you may want to uh, try out this push pull. Fine, if we do this push pull, then you can like push or pull them outside like this. Fine, instead of extruding, it will look like it is coming out from here itself. So dependent upon your understanding, you can do that. Okay, now what we are going to do is we need to apply the colors for this, and that way you can complete your cube part from here. So let's assign some color to it. A base material, base color which is already there, we will set that base color. Fine, so this is the base color of our object. We'll put it in material preview. So this is the base color. Fine, now let's get into the edit mode. Now we want to edit this, change the color of these ones, right? Change the color of these ones. So you will have to select these, all of these together. Fine, so I've selected them. Okay, and now we are going to create the new color, and simply create a new color whichever you want. Like you want the red color, and assign it over here. So if you go into the rendered or material preview, you have the red color done over here. Fine, this is reddish color. Similarly, you will have to select these remaining faces over here. Okay, fine, and let's create another color over here which would be like say blue, and let's assign them. So this way you will end up putting all the colors. Fine, and then you can further work upon it. Now you can like if you want, you can select all these things and maybe do some extrude operation or other operation that you may want. You can do this. Now if you remember, one more interesting aspect that I had done on my this cube was the small circle in between. So for that, what I did was I subdivided this, and there is a very interesting tool available in Blender which you have to go and get it added from the preferences and add-ons. Fine, if you go to preferences, there are some add-ons, and there is an add-on called as loop tools. Fine, this one you have to enable this. So if this loop tool is enabled with these squares selected or this thing, you can convert them into a circle. Then there are options like best fit and other things. I will select the radius, and I will reduce the radius. It's still bigger. Uh, Fit inside. Just a second. We'll have to select lesser number of objects. So let's say, let me show you how this thing works. Okay, now let's run the loop tool on this. Fine. Make it a circle. Fine. So you could set the size and you could create a circle like this. Fine. The circle is created, then you can say dissolve faces, and now you could do your extrude operation on this. This time we put it inside. So what we have is a face which has a circular area in between. Right. So there are a lot of tools and techniques available here in Blender to get these things done, and you have your objects. Right. So I think I have covered most of these tools over here. Inset, I have covered extrude, I have covered scaling and all. And in editing mode, this way you can edit and create different objects. There are many other aspects, further more advanced ones, where we have modifiers and other things which help us get our work done easily, that we can uh, see in some other workshop later on when I continue with my series of this thing. In fact, the shading or material itself is a huge section to discuss. So maybe in any other some other workshop that I conduct later on, I will take up these things. Now, before finishing off, I would want to show you one last part, is that a simulation that you can do with Blender, a cloth simulation, how you can simply create a cloth simulation. So we have this object over here. Now, what we'll do is we will add a plane over here. We will scale it a bit. Fine. Now, this plane is going to act as a cloth for us. Fine. So now, you know, the better quality cloth can fold better. Fine. So this is a single piece of plane, and this is not going to work as a cloth properly. So what we are going to do is, first of all, let's subdivide this. Fine. Let's subdivide this multiple times. Fine. It allows 10 subdivisions at a time. So this is done. Fine. We will get into the subdivision again after I demonstrate to you the effects. So let's first put some nice material on the cloth. Let's say red. Fine. Red is fine. Red colored cloth, or maybe let's take the blue. The blue is going to take up a lot of processing power when I'm displaying it. So let's keep it on red. Make it out. Okay, yellowish cloth. So how do we simulate a cloth kind of a effect? Fine. Now keep in mind the number of subdivisions decides the fold of the cloth. So to do that, Blender has a lot of inbuilt physics mechanism, and we have to do that. So first thing is, we will take the cloth. We will go into the physics tab over here, and we will say it is cloth, and we will enable its collision. Fine. Also, we will make it a rigid body, and we will say it is active. Active means what? It will, gravity will affect it. So gravity works on Z axis, so it will fall down from up to down, and you can decide the weight and all. Everything is there. This is quite interesting software. Fine. So we will just leave it like this. Now the next thing is, you could simply play this and see the effect, but we could not see the effect because it's not hitting anything. So the second object, to make it look effective, we will take this cube, make it a rigid body, and make it passive. Passive means it does not interact with gravity by default. Fine. So let's try playing this and see what happens. Again, my cloth passed. Why? Because it's not detecting the collision. So we will say collision on this, and let's play this again. Okay. Now, because of the number of divisions and all, it did not work very well over here. So let's do one thing. This collision, let's put it shape as box. Let's try again once. This is again passing through it. For this one also, I think collision should be box shape. Let's try it again. Okay. So now it is working. So pollution shape is this. Now let's get into edit mode again. Let's add, let's subdivide it further, and let's try this again now. Now you can see the effect of the cloth is much better and different, right? This is a simulation over here, cloth simulation. So you could simply export this as a video to do a cloth simulation, or many a times when you might have seen people showing you a table with a tablecloth on it. Fine. So like if you select this and let's say select all, subdivide it further once more, and if we play this simulation now, now you see it, the processing power that is required by my computer has increased, but now the simulation will be much more better because the number of divisions on that cloth has increased. So we have a cloth simulation. Again, you have to work around many other aspects over here. Sometimes the cloth will tear and fall off, and it may not be very nice to look at it. And like instead of cube, if we grab this cube away and we add, let's say, the mesh monkey over here, fine. If the mesh is monkey, we'll scale it a bit, apply scale, and let's make this collision and rigid body and passive. And this time you see the shape, how it takes up that particular shape, right? Settings we have to do. Sometimes it may tear off, sometimes it may be something else. Issues can occur that you have to try, test, work around, learn on the net. So this is a simulation that we can do. Similarly, many other simulations are there. Fluid simulation can be done. You can do a fire simulation, and other aspects can be done. So that is there. So now even to do this, you need to know the edit mode, because if the number of subdivisions are less on our object, then obviously the simulation or the effect looks different on it. Fine. So let's have a look at the simulation once more from the near point, and you can see how it is wrapping around. And maybe I could stop it at this particular one, and I could put my camera and I could like take the screenshot of this. Screenshot means I could take a rendered output of this. Like I place my camera somewhere, fine, and I could take the screenshot of this. Okay. So that's it about the edit mode and all. So the forum is open. If you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we can end off today's session. I hope you enjoyed the different aspects of our edit mode in Blender. Of course, to work with this, you should be conversant with the basics of Blender, and this edit mode is helpful for further modeling purpose. So if you have any questions, please go ahead, ask them. I hope you enjoyed the session. Okay, then thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the session. We'll continue with the different workshops in coming weeks on different topics. Since you are already in the group, you will come to know about that. Thanks once again. See you soon for the next workshop. Have a nice day.